Today's story is so quietly devastating, it lingers long after the fire burns out. Set in a west of endless horizons and wind-carved red stone. It's a place where survival hardens the heart and fate waits at the edge of the desert, patient as a drawn bow. It began with a simple invitation: close your eyes. Just small enough to seem harmless, yet powerful enough to unravel 18 years of buried strength. Before we kick off this adventure, don't forget to hit like on the video and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Brynn Calder had worn strength so long it no longer felt like a choice. It felt like skin. Folks in town spoke of it the way they spoke of weather or drought. Dependable, unshakable, always there. Strength was her shield, her trade, her reputation. She was the one who never buckled, never wept, never asked. The woman who could shoulder what would break most men and still stand straight as a fence post in high wind. She hadn't been born that way. No one is. Strength had been hammered into her the way iron is shaped, by heat and pressure. When Moira Calder died, Brynn was 10 years old and suddenly the oldest of 5. Silas Calder, once steady and broad-backed, unraveled slow as old rope, grief in one hand, whiskey in the other. The house fell quiet except for crying children and the scrape of empty plates. Brynn stepped into the space her mother left like it had always been meant for her. She cooked, scrubbed, mended, soothed. She braided hair with fingers still small, hushed nightmares she was having herself. While Silas drifted deeper into sorrow, Brynn became the beam that kept the roof from caving in. The Calder younglings clung to her skirts, and she carried them all, fed them when her own stomach ached, smiled when fear crawled up her spine, stood firm when she wanted nothing more than to curl up and call for the mother who would never answer. She held that family together through lean winters and unpaid debts, through Silas's slow fading and the final quiet of his passing. Poverty settled over them like dust, constant and choking. By 18, her youngest brother was apprenticed to a blacksmith, sparks flying instead of tears. Brynn was finally free and bone-deep weary. 8 years of swallowed grief had weight. 8 years of being needed without ever being held had carved hollows inside her. Freedom did not feel like flight. It felt like collapse, held off by sheer will. She followed the Iron Trail folk west, chasing talk of fresh starts and open sky. The frontier promised reinvention. She took it at its word. In a rough settlement edged by red stone and wind, she found work at a trading post owned by Garron Vale, a blunt, sharp-eyed man who respected results more than charm. Brynn gave him results. Her ledgers were neat as stitching. Her shelves stayed stocked. The Red Mesa buyers trusted her word more than most contracts. Garron learned fast that she could handle anything he set before her, so he set more. Within a year, she was running the place while he rode supply lines. Within 2, she commanded the Vale crew with quiet authority. Within 3, her name carried across the territory. If there was trouble, Brynn Calder would see it through. She was 28, and she was tired in a way sleep could not cure. The ache lived in her shoulders, knotted tight as lariats. It sat in her spine, in the watchfulness that never loosened, even in silence. She could not remember the last time she had let her guard drop, could not recall what it felt like to exist without bracing for the next demand. Takakota first came to the trading post on an ordinary afternoon, though nothing about him felt ordinary. Mescalero Apache, trader in horses and hides, sometimes guide for those fool enough to cross land they didn't understand. He moved through the world with measured calm, speaking little, listening much. He'd been coming for months, steady, reliable, never wasting words. Brynn noticed everything. She noticed him, tall, broad-shouldered, carrying stillness like a weapon. His face was lined by sun and wind, his dark eyes sharp and knowing. He rarely smiled, but when he did, there was no cruelty in it. He dealt straight. No false praise, no wasted chatter. In a world full of men eager to impress her or undermine her, she found his simplicity almost disarming. She hadn't meant to grow close to him. Friendship cost energy she did not have. It required softness, and softness felt dangerous. Yet over time, something took root. He lingered after business was done, asked about her day, about her past, looked at her not the way others did. Most people saw strength. They saw a woman built of iron, a woman who needed nothing. Takakota saw past it. "You're worn thin," he said one afternoon. They were alone in the back room, the scent of ink and dust thick in the air. Brynn's pen paused over the ledger. Instinct rose fast. Deny it, smile it off, stay composed. But his gaze held no challenge, no pity, only quiet certainty. "Yes," she said, the word slipping out before she could catch it. "I am." "How long have you been carrying it?" he asked. She swallowed. "Since I was 10. The truth stunned her. She did not speak of those years. She did not peel back armor for anyone. Takakota nodded slowly, as if he had already known. "That's a long time to stand guard alone," he said. "Too long." "There wasn't anyone else," Brynn replied. Her voice stayed steady, but her chest tightened. "If I hadn't held it all together, it would have fallen apart." He studied her for a moment, eyes dark and thoughtful. "And now?" he asked quietly. "Is there still no one?" "And now?" Takakota asked softly. "Are you still alone?" The question struck Brynn harder than she expected. She had built her whole life on one hard truth: depend on no one. Strength meant never reaching, never leaning, never needing. That belief had kept the Calder younglings alive. It had kept her standing. It had also kept her solitary as a lone rider on open range. The notion that someone might share the load with her, might carry her for once instead of the other way around, felt near impossible to grasp. The thought was strange as snow in July. "I don't know," she admitted at last. Her voice sounded smaller than she liked. "I don't know how to let anyone help me. I don't know how to be anything but strong." Takakota didn't answer right away. His dark gaze studied her, steady and searching, yet never prying. It should have made her uneasy. Instead, it felt like standing in quiet water, deep but calm. "Then maybe," he said slowly, "it's time you learned." That moment marked the start of something neither of them had named. In the months that followed, Takakota kept returning to the trading post. He lingered after business with the Red Mesa buyers was done. He asked questions no one else thought to ask. He saw past the composed manager of the Veil crew and into the woman worn thin beneath the surface. They talked, truly talked. Brynn spoke of Moira Calder's passing, of Silas Calder's slow unraveling, of years spent mothering the Calder younglings while still a child herself. She told him about hunger, about fear, about carrying a house on shoulders too young for such weight. Takakota spoke of a pony the wife's sickness had taken from him, of children who never came, of walking between worlds, too native for settlers, too tied to trade for his own people, of belonging everywhere and nowhere at once. What grew between them was more than friendship, though Brynn couldn't quite name it. There was heat when he stood too close, a pull she felt in her ribs. But deeper than desire was recognition. He understood what it meant to carry grief in silence, to keep moving because stopping wasn't an option. He never tried to mend her like something broken. Never told her she was wrong for surviving the only way she knew how. He simply saw her, saw the iron and the cracks beneath it, and let her be both. Slowly, against instinct and habit, Brynn Calder began to trust him. The night everything shifted felt ordinary at first. The trading post had shut its doors. The Vale crew had gone home. Lantern light flickered over the ledger in Brynn's office as she tallied accounts. Her shoulders burned with familiar tension. A dull ache pulsed behind her eyes. The numbers blurred together until ink bled into shadow. She heard Takota's boots before she saw him, recognized the rhythm of his stride. Something in her chest eased at the sound. "You're still at it," he said from the doorway. No judgment, just fact. "There's always more to do," Brynn replied, not lifting her head. "There's always more," he agreed. "And there's always you, doing it, even when you can barely see straight." She set the pen down and pressed her fingers to her temples. "What would you have me do? Things don't run themselves. Someone's got to keep it steady." "If you don't," Takakota said gently, "someone else will. Or maybe it waits till tomorrow. The world won't collapse because Brynn Calder takes one night for herself." She looked up then, really looked at him. There was something new in his expression. Resolve. A decision already made. "Come with me," he said. "I want to show you something." She should have refused. The accounts weren't finished. Garin Vale expected precision. Responsibility didn't pause for weariness. But she was so tired, and his voice was so steady. "All right," she heard herself say. "Show me." He led her beyond the last buildings, past the reach of lamplight, into open desert, where the sky stretched endless and thick with stars. A small fire burned ahead. Blankets lay spread across the sand. He had planned this. Brynn stopped. "What is this?" "This," Takakota said, "is a night where you don't have to be strong." Her breath caught. "A night where someone else keeps watch," he continued, "where you're allowed to rest." Longing and fear knotted tight in her chest. "I don't know how," she whispered. "I don't know how to let someone take care of me." "I know," he answered softly. "That's why I'm going to teach you." He guided her to the blankets and helped her sit. Then he knelt before her, taking her hands in his. "I'm going to ask something of you," he said. "It won't be easy. It goes against everything that kept you alive. But I need you to trust me." His grip was warm, steady. "I need you to believe I won't let harm come near you. Can you do that?" Brynn looked into his eyes, those quiet, unwavering eyes that had seen her clearly from the start. She thought of years spent bracing against storms, of weight pressed into bone, of exhaustion that no sleep could mend. She thought of how desperately she wanted to lay it down. "Yes," she breathed. "I can." Takakota smiled, a rare, unguarded expression that softened his weathered face. "Close your eyes," he whispered. "Just for tonight. Trust me." Brynn Calder closed her eyes, and the world shifted. With her eyes shut, the world sharpened instead of fading. Brynn felt everything, the cool sweep of desert air across her skin, the steady pop and hiss of the fire, the scent of sagebrush curling through wood smoke. Most of all, she felt Takota's hands wrapped around hers, solid and sure. "Tonight," he said quietly, his voice low as the wind across open land, "you don't have to keep watch. I'm watching. You don't have to fix a single thing. There's nothing to fix. And you don't have to be strong." His words settled over her like a blanket. "I'm strong enough for both of us," he continued. "All you have to do is feel." Let yourself receive. Let yourself be taken care of. Tears gathered behind her closed lids. When had anyone last told her she didn't have to hold the line? When had someone offered to shoulder the load she carried? Never. The answer echoed in the dark. She felt Takakota release her hands. A moment later, his presence shifted behind her, warm, steady, unshakable at her back. "I'm going to touch you," he said gently. "Not to take, to give, to show you what it feels like to be cared for instead of always doing the caring." His palms came to rest on her shoulders. Brynn drew in a sharp breath. It was such a simple thing. Just hands against muscles that had been tight for as long as she could remember. Yet with her eyes closed and his voice close to her ear, it felt like something far greater than touch. It felt like permission. "Breathe," Takakota murmured. "Let it go." His fingers worked into the knots buried deep in her shoulders. Years of tension wound tight as coiled rope. 18 years of bracing against storms that never seemed to end. Brynn inhaled the way he told her to. Slow, deep. The air filled her lungs, and for the first time she allowed herself to sink into the sensation of being tended to. It wasn't easy. Every instinct in her body screamed to open her eyes, to stay alert, to be ready in case something went wrong. That was how she survived, by never letting her guard drop. But she had given her word, so she kept her eyes closed, kept breathing, kept letting him ease the strain from her shoulders. "You've been carrying too much," Takakota said softly as his hands moved. "Responsibility, worry, years of it. I can feel it in you. All that time you were never allowed to rest." "There was no one else," Brynn whispered. "If I didn't carry it—" "I know," he said. "I'm not blaming you. I'm grieving for you. For the child who had to be grown before her time. For all the care you gave and never received. For the weight you bore alone." His hand slid from her shoulders to the back of her neck, finding tension she hadn't even known was there. When it released, the tears came harder. They slipped down her cheeks, unstoppable. Grief long buried cracked open inside her, years of it stored deep as drought in dry earth. "Let it out," Takakota said. "You're safe here. Feel whatever rises. I won't think less of you. I won't expect you to stand tall tonight. You can be anything you need to be." Those words shattered something inside her. The tears turned to sobs, deep, shaking waves she had held back since she was 10 years old. She cried for Brynn Calder, for the childhood stolen from her, for the nights she swallowed fear so the Calder younglings wouldn't see it, for every time she needed comfort but gave it instead. For every day she stood upright on legs that trembled because no one else would. Through it all, Takakota held her. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her against his chest. He let her lean her full weight into him. He didn't hush her, didn't try to fix the pain, didn't promise it would all be fine. He simply stayed. Steady, warm, unmoving as stone. When the storm of tears finally quieted, when her sobs softened to shivers, Brynn felt lighter. Not healed. Healing was a long trail, but unburdened in a way she hadn't known was possible. "I didn't know I was carrying all that," she whispered. "The loads we bear become invisible," Takakota replied. "We grow used to the weight and forget it's there. But it still costs us. It still presses down." He turned her gently to face him, though she kept her eyes closed as he had asked. His hands rose to cradle her face. His thumbs brushed away the damp trails on her cheeks. "You're beautiful," he said. Her breath caught. "Not just in the way you look, though you are," he continued, "but in who you are. In your strength, yes, and in your tenderness. The part you hid for so long. In your courage. The courage that brought you here. The courage to close your eyes and trust me. No one had ever called her that. Capable, reliable, indispensable. Those were words she knew. But beautiful? The word struck somewhere fragile. I'm going to kiss you now, Takakota said quietly. If you want me to. Yes, Brynn breathed. Please. His lips met hers with a gentleness that made her heart ache. The kiss wasn't taken. It was offered. Soft. Unhurried. Asking instead of claiming. It told her she was cherished. She had been kissed before. Fleeting moments with the wayward riders, careless and forgettable. But never like this. Never with such care. Never with someone wholly present, wholly attentive to her. When the kiss ended, she kept her eyes closed, lingering in the warmth of it, unwilling to rush back to the world of ledgers and expectations. You can open your eyes, Takakota said softly. If you're ready. Brynn opened her eyes slowly, letting the firelight ease back into focus. Takakota was watching her, and the look in his eyes, steady, gentle, unguarded, stirred fresh tears she hadn't known were still waiting. How do you feel? He asked. She thought about it before she answered. Lighter, she said at last. Like I've been walking around with rocks in my coat pockets for 18 years. And somebody finally told me I could set them down. A faint smile touched Takota's mouth. Good, he said. That's a beginning. A beginning of what? A beginning of learning you don't have to carry the whole sky by yourself, he replied. A beginning of knowing strength isn't the only thing you have to offer, and that asking for help doesn't make you weak. He hesitated, choosing his words with care. A beginning of letting me, he said quietly, be someone you can lean on, if that's what you want. Brynn studied him. The man who had seen past her walls, who had built this night with his own hands, who had held her while she broke and never once tried to control the breaking. I want that, she said. Her voice was steady, certain. I want it more than I've ever wanted anything. They stayed by the fire long after that. The desert wrapped around them like a silent witness. They spoke in low tones, shared small touches, learned each other beyond flesh and heat. It wasn't hurried. It wasn't desperate. It was deliberate. Takakota fed her from the meal he'd prepared himself, refusing to let her rise and serve as she always did. Sit, he told her gently. Tonight you receive. He brushed her hair back from her face and said it was beautiful. He traced slow circles in her palm with his thumb, as if memorizing her. When a chill crept in, he wrapped her in blankets and drew her against him so she could hear the steady drum of his heartbeat. You can be tired here, he murmured. You can be soft. You can be afraid. You can be unsure. You can be anything. He rested his forehead against hers. I'm not with you because you're strong, Brynn, he said. I'm with you because you're you, all of you, even the parts you tried to hide. For the first time in 18 years, Brynn Calder allowed herself to stop standing guard. She let herself be fragile. She let herself be cared for. She closed her eyes and trusted that someone else would keep watch while she slept. That night, beneath a sky thick with stars and beside a dying fire, she fell asleep in Takota's arms, her ear pressed to his chest, the rhythm of his heart steady as distant thunder rolling across open plains. When morning came, she woke changed, not healed. Wounds like hers did not vanish overnight. But something inside her had shifted, like a door long nailed shut had finally been pried open. In the months that followed, she began learning how to share what she had always carried alone. It wasn't easy. Habits built over a lifetime cling hard. There were days she slipped back, took on too much, drove herself past reason, forgot she didn't have to shoulder every burden. But Takakota was there. "Close your eyes," he would remind her softly. "Trust me." And she would. They married in a ceremony that blended his traditions with hers, firelight and prayer, sage smoke and whispered vows. Their life together looked nothing like either of them had once imagined. Brynn remained at the trading post, but she expanded the Veil crew, delegated more, learned that not every task needed her hands on it. She allowed small things to go unfinished without feeling like the world would collapse. Takakota continued trading, guiding travelers across harsh land, honoring a pony's memory without letting it chain him to the past. And no matter how far he rode, he always returned home to Brynn. He reminded her daily that she was more than competence, more than endurance, more than the sum of her responsibilities. He loved her not for what she could accomplish, but for who she was. And sometimes, when the weight of everything pressed too heavy against her ribs, when old habits crept back like shadows at dusk, Takakota would take her once more to that quiet stretch of desert where it had begun. He would build a fire, spread blankets across the sand, gather her into his arms. "Close your eyes," he would whisper. "Just for tonight. Trust me." And she would close them. She would let herself rest. She would remember she was loved, not for her strength, but for her soul. Brynn Calder had spent most of her life believing she had to stand alone, that needing someone meant weakness, that being cared for was a luxury meant for other women. Takakota taught her otherwise. He taught her that trusting someone with your fragile places is the bravest act a person can make. That closing your eyes is not surrender, it is freedom. That sometimes the strongest thing you can do is let someone else be strong for you. "Close your eyes," he had whispered. "Just for tonight. Trust me." And she did. And that trust remade her world. Finally, let me send my deep thanks to you. Thank you for listening. If this story has touched your heart, I invite you to stay with us to discover more true tales of the Wild West. Stories that honor resilience, tenderness, and the spirit that God placed in those who blaze the trail. Subscribe, share, leave your thoughts in the comments, and join us once again to journey across this untamed land. Thank you. Aviso legal/disclaimer. These stories are crafted purely for entertainment and may contain imaginative additions or dramatic interpretations inspired by old frontier eras. We use AI-based resources, voice, imagery, and drafting as part of our creative process. But every final detail is carefully reviewed and shaped by human effort to preserve emotional depth and authenticity. We strictly follow YouTube's rules regarding AI-generated content and refrain from deepfakes, altered identities, or misleading representations. All images, sounds, and related materials are lawfully obtained. Please do not reuse, modify, or distribute any portion of this content without written permission. Thank you for valuing creativity, respect, and original work.